The individuals involved in the United Nations are nations that ratify agreements. Yeah. And it's somewhat important that all of those, yeah, amendment establishing the World Trade Organization, yeah, that they are bound to the enforcement of those agreements. Now, you might want to understand that since my marriage certificate was issued from the United Nations and you didn't have the authority to dissolve it, yeah, that gives me the right to have a divorce in the United Nations, but it has to be recognized as an actual legal instrument. And when it has to be acknowledged, yeah, the United Nations can't deny itself. Well, that means I can use any agency of the United Nations. Now, I have some legitimate claims against the United States where I could go to the WTO and say, well, I have an identifier from the United Nations that married us, and the United States refuses to acknowledge its agreements. Now, I gave you all the documentation necessary to see that you can't dissolve it. And your whole thought was, well, we can do whatever we want. Well, since you can do whatever you want, I can make the United States. Now, there's some large attorney firms that are familiar with suing nations because now I'm suing nations. See, the state wouldn't do what they were bound to do. The county won't do what it's bound to do. So now I'm going to obligate the United States to be binding. The binding obligations of the United States that has signed these multilateral trade agreements that has the knowledge that the state of Washington refuses to acknowledge the laws of the United States. Now, I've asked you to remove your fraud, and you sat there and made up fake crimes against me so that you could cover up all your crime. Well, now it involves the United States getting sued because I will sue the United States for refusing to obligate my right to manufacture and sell any innovation. I know you're in the police department and you thought that you had a lot of authority. The only authority you have is to enforce the laws. You took what authority that you had, you made up fake crimes against innocent Americans right now to cover up your own criminal behavior. Now, obviously, you've intentionally refused to acknowledge the binding laws of the state and the United States, and the United States has refused to obligate you to be bound up first the fucking